Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC 320. In this one, we got Josh Emmett taking on Youssef Zalal. Emmett is 19-5 as a professional, 2-3 in his last five fights, while Zalal is 17-5-1, 5-0 as of right now in his last five fights, riding overall a 7-fight win streak. So, just the first thoughts of when I saw this fight was announced is power and brute strength taking on speed and elusiveness. Is like just the first thing that really comes to mind. And honestly, it's kind of crazy to think not only are these two fighting, but more so that these two have one thing in common. They're the only fighters in the UFC to take Ilia Topuria to a decision. Nobody else survived but these two. I just find that kind of humorous. More or less, or I guess it's funny how MMA works in those kind of ways, at least for me. So looking at Emmett's last five, his wins are pretty good. They're like all right now, but boy, he's only lost to like elite level fighters. Look at his last five. He beats Calvin Kattar in a split decision, which granted probably should have gone to Kattar, but is what it is. Then he loses to Yair Rodriguez in an interim title fight. Then he gets brutally beaten for 5 rounds by Ilia Topuria. I don't know how the fuck he stood up after taking those bombs. But then at UFC 296, he gets his own highlight reel knockout when he knocks out Bryce Mitchell to a seizure. And probably he had Mitchell talking to the Lord Almighty himself with that. After that, he was pretty inactive. He didn't fight at all in 2024. And his most recent fight is April of this year, where he lost a decision to Lerone Murphy. Again, not a terrible loss, and honestly, you think Lerone is probably the next guy to fight for the title, if not Evloev. So, again, no shame in the loss, but it's kind of clear that this new crop of contenders are just able to beat Emmett and his, I would say, simplistic game. Now, looking at Youssef Zalal, it's a very interesting story, his redemption in the UFC. He was an all-right fighter. I would say he was a raw material. He had really good skill sets, but a game that definitely fell apart to adversity. But for the first few fights, he was on a 3-fight win streak in his first stint in the UFC, then losing or going winless in his last four. 3 losses, 1 draw. But you think, man, he's only lost to some really good guys, one of them being Ilia Topuria, and the draw to Damon Blackshear. No real shame in that. But since then, he went back to, I think it was Sparta FC he went to. Got a pretty good win streak going there. Got a short notice call to fight Billy Q last year in, I want to say, March, where he submitted Corntello. Then he fought 2 more times last year as well. In August, where he submitted Jorno Aarons, and November, where he again submitted Jack Shore. In his most recent fight of February of this year, he beats Calvin Kattar in the decision in what was pretty much a lackluster performance, where he mostly was on his bicycle, and especially that third round where it felt like he was just jogging away from Calvin Kattar. Now, recency bias does play a big thing in MMA, and you're only as good as your last fight, as they say. I'm not a big fan of that line, just because for me it's like, oh wow, Zalal is boring. He's just on that bike all the time, and he just point fights. When in the last 3 fights before that, he did not fight that way. He was aggressive. He was pretty mean, I would say, and a very good striker and a dangerous submission artist. And he would go for that finish. So I can't just like go, oh man, he's boring off one fight. Now, if it's a boring fight with Emmett, okay, then maybe he values points over a finish. But at the end of the day, a win's a win. So I gotta respect that. Just breaking down the overall technical game, like I said, Emmett's a pretty simplistic style to break down. But sometimes simplicity is the best. Emmett has probably the hardest punch at 145 right now, besides, I'd say, Diego Lopez and John Silva. But even then, I would rate Emmett's power much better than both of them. Just because he has true one-shot power in this division that I've never seen before. Closest you could think of would be Chad Mendez. But even then, maybe Emmett might hit harder. I don't know. But that being said, he has very limited striking arsenal. It's mostly right hook, right overhand. He'll sometimes throw a jab, and he'll sometimes throw a rear uppercut. and sometimes he'll throw leg kicks. But that's really it. That's most of what his striking is. Those long winging punches. But he's got really good cardio to go 5 rounds. He's shown multiple times. And that power carries late into fights. Like I can think of like the Michael Johnson fight where he was down 2 rounds and looks like he was losing the third until landed on the chin and it was done. Now, he's got really good wrestling. He does have a wrestling background. I'm forgetting exactly what level it was, but I know it was like college level wrestling. I could be off on exactly his credentials. If you want to write in the comments, I'd love to hear it. But he's got very explosive wrestling. And even at 40 years old, he still has really good explosiveness, very strong. Like you saw when in that Murphy fight where he just literally picked him up. He's still very strong and powerful at his advantage. And I know 40 is not super old, but in fight years, and especially at like featherweight, it's pretty old. Now, as for Zalal's game, it's a much more dynamic game, and it's a much more multi-layered game, I would say. He's got very good kicks from distance. He's very good in the clinch as well, good elbows, good knees. I would say his submission game is definitely his best, but his strike is nothing to scoff at. Like, he timed the perfect knee against Jack Shore before going for the arm triangle. And that's really what, like I said, his best games are his submissions. His back take is very good. His trips in close quarters were great. See with that like Corntello fight where he has 50-50, plants his forearm on the jaw, uses his leg to wrap around Corntello's and just forces him down. He's got very good trips in the clinch. And overall, I would say his backpack game is very good. You saw with Jordan Owens, just got it, the rear naked choke standing. He's very hard to get off you. I wouldn't say he's like glue, but it's kind of like a Sterling game where once he gets the back, it's kind of over. Or either the round is going to end with him on your back or you're going to get choked out. He's very tough to get off you. Honestly, though, I can't see how Josh Emmett wins this fight, if I'm being honest. Because let's say Zalal sticks to the same game plan he did against Kattar, right? Kattar couldn't touch him throughout the entire fight. Now, it was a wash, Calvin Kattar, I will admit. And Emmett seems to have a bit more fuel left in the tank. But I don't think by much, really. I see Zalal kind of picking him apart at range, using dynamic kicks, long-range striking, never really putting himself too much in danger. And that's kind of how you need to fight in order to beat Josh Emmett. Unless you're like Jeremy Stevens and you break his face. But most fighters beat him by just having better reach than him and being kind of a buzzsaw to go through. I think the biggest example was Yair, who just picked him apart, and Emmett looked lost after the first round just because he could not deal with the speed and technique and just the range of Yair. Now, Zalal has a bit different dimensions. He's not as tall and doesn't have the same reach, but he's still 5'10 with a 72-inch reach in comparison to Emmett, who's 5'6 with a 70-inch reach. 70-inch reach. So, really, the game plan should be very similar. In fact, I can even see him finding the submission after hurting Emmett throughout the fight. But, honestly, I see kind of just like 15 minutes of work from Zalal where, he just stays safe and picks apart Emmett. I was saying he's pretty fun to watch, and I do still hold that true, but in this fight, safety first. Because last thing you need is to be looking up at the lights thinking, damn, how did I get caught with that? Odds for this fight, I agree with them. Minus 440 for Zalal, plus 340 for Emmett. I agree with these. Not big to bet on, but I do believe Zalal should be this big of a favorite. He's on such a great momentum streak right now. He's 29, I believe. If he's now entering his prime, it's crazy to think. I will admit, it's crazy to think there's like an 11-year age gap between these two. Another big thing I wanted to add is like I've been saying how Emmett has this crazy power in his streak. You can watch like his knockout of like Ricardo Lamas. I mean, that was just vicious. Or again, like I said, the Michael Johnson fight. But you look at his actual record. He doesn't have that many knockout wins. Of 19 victories, I believe his knockout wins are about 8 to 7. Big thing is he doesn't set them up properly. He's got the power, absolutely. But it feels like he doesn't set them up properly at times. Like, I can think of multiple fights that he won via decision where he could have gotten the knockout if you really set him up properly. Like, set up the hook properly. Like, I guess like how you think of Pereira who does it. like just gets the reads, jab, jab, just kind of lulls the action, then explodes with the left hook. Like if Emmett did some very good setups, he'd have, I think, a lot more knockouts, and I think he would have a better chance of winning even this individual fight. But just in general, some of the fights in his career. Now, granted, that's a tough thing to ask when you're fighting someone's like the Yairs and Toporias of the world. But I'm just thinking, if he had a bit more technique, a bit more of a feint game, I think he'd be a lot more successful than what he is now. But with all this being said, I'm going to pick Youssef Zalal, and I'm going to go with a decision. Josh Emmett is still very tough. He's very difficult to get out there. And even if there were finish, the best I could think would be Zalal would get a really good submission win, but I don't really see that as a possibility. Emmett's just got pretty good submission defense. Now, I say this when he got submitted by Yair, so I absolutely think Zalal could submit him, but Yair put himself into the fire at times with that fight. I don't think Zalal's going to do the same. So, I'm going to pick Youssef Zalal, and I am going to go with him via decision. But that's been my breakdown of this fight. If you liked the video, comment and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win between Emmett and Zalal? Let me know. Next up, we have the best fight on the card, my favorite fight on the card. I think most people's favorite fight on the card. Jiří Procházka versus Khalil Roundtree. Oh boy, I'm just so excited to talk about that. And I can't wait for you all to listen to it, hopefully. With that being said, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. Thank you all for listening. Take care.